My name is Dr. Shahid. I'm a general pediatrician and medical educator. And in this video series, we've been talking about how to prevent burnout and develop resilience for doctors and medical students. The topic of this video is using emotional intelligence skills to develop resilience. This is part one of a two-part series on this topic. So let's go ahead and get started. This is the overview that we have been using that looks over how wellness and burnout are related. So I like to consider wellness and burnout on opposite ends of the spectrum. So if we can do things that promote wellness, that will help prevent burnout. And ways to increase wellness include developing resilience and doing other things that can prevent burnout. And the blue arrows going between these two indicate that there's overlap. So anything that develops resilience will also help prevent burnout, and anything that prevents burnout will also help develop resilience. Now, this is my own diagram and my own overview of wellness and burnout and resilience, and how to work with all of that. But it's not all inclusive. But there is a lot of literature that really supports all of these type of activities. So when you look at this diagram, you see other blue arrows between wellness dimensions and resilience strategies and self-care and organizational strategies. So again, those blue arrows indicate that there's overlap between all of these. So anything that develops resilience will also help prevent burnout, and any self-care activity, for example, that helps prevent burnout will also develop resilience, all in an effort to promote wellness, because we know that wellness is on the opposite end of the spectrum compared to burnout. And if we can increase wellness, that will help prevent burnout. In previous videos, we've talked about other aspects of resilience strategies, including positive thinking and reframing and optimism, gratitude, reflection, altruism, and meaning and purpose. But today, we're going to focus on this area here, which is focusing on emotional intelligence, or EI, and components of emotional intelligence, such as self-awareness and self-management. So let's go ahead and get started on this topic. So just a review of the definition of resilience. In this article, the authors define resilience as the ability of an individual to respond to stress in a healthy, adaptive way, such that personal goals are achieved at minimal psychological and physical cost. So resilience is how you respond to stress. And do you expend a lot of energy in response to that stress? When you lack resilience, you end up expending a lot of emotional energy, mental energy, psychological energy, physical energy in your response to that stress. But when you have a high level of resilience, you respond to that stress in a very healthy way, in a very productive way, in a way that does not expend a lot of energy. So that's why it's so important to develop resilience, because that can help prevent burnout, so that you're not expending a lot of energy when you're going through stressful situations. And we know from the literature that resilience may protect professionals from the common stressors of the workplace and personal stressors and the tendency to burn out. So again, resilience is protective against burnout. So we need to promote resilience. So how is resilience related to emotional intelligence, or EI? We know from the literature that EI can affect behavioral responses to stress. And those individuals with lower emotional intelligence are more likely to adopt maladaptive coping strategies, and that these maladaptive coping strategies can drain you emotionally, mentally, and physically, and thereby promote burnout. And we know the opposite is true, that individuals with high level of emotional intelligence have the ability to better cope with stress. So this is the Yerkes-Dodson curve. This was created back in 1908 by these two psychologists, Yerkes and Dodson. And they basically said that we all have an optimal level of stress in which we can achieve peak performance. So as you can see in this curve, we have to have some amount of stress in order to allow us to perform effectively. If we don't have not a lot of stress or enough stress, then we are inactive or bored. We need some stress to motivate us and to focus us. And this optimal level of stress will allow us to have peak performance. But when you exceed that stress level, that optimal level of stress, and you go into stress overload, that's when you become fatigued and exhausted and start to burn out, and your peak performance starts to come down. So again, we have this optimal level of stress that we all work at that allows for peak performance. So I think this is important to keep in mind as we're talking about the topic of resilience and response to stress. Now, I like to think of emotional intelligence and resilience shifting the curve to the right. So what does that mean? In the original curve, this stress level here allowed for peak performance, and a stress level here saw a decrease in performance. But when you have emotional intelligence and when you have resilience, that shifts the curve to the right so that the same increased level of stress that initially might have brought down your performance actually is the level of peak performance. So at that added level of stress, increased level of stress, you are still able to perform in a very effective way. So emotional intelligence and resilience can shift the curve to the right. So that's how I like to think about the role of emotional intelligence and resilience when it comes to responding to stress and being able to perform under stress. So again, if we can increase emotional intelligence levels, we know that may help develop coping mechanisms that are more adaptive to stressful situations and could promote resilience and prevent burnout. So this was a study from the Ohio State University in which they looked at first-year pediatric residents and med-peds residents. And what they found was that things that prevented burnout included mindfulness, resilience, and self-compassion. So again, this study showed that resilience can help protect against burnout. But what they further found was emotional intelligence had a direct positive effect on resilience and therefore help prevent burnout. So increasing emotional intelligence can help increase resilience, which can then help prevent burnout. So this is one of the studies that has shown that emotional intelligence can help increase resilience, which can then help reduce the risk of burning out. This is a study out of Stanford University in which they looked at 73 surgery residents. And they found that the emotional intelligence scores of these residents correlated positively with psychological well-being and inversely with depression and burnout. And they concluded that interventions to increase emotional intelligence can be effective at optimizing the wellness of residents. So again, if we can increase emotional intelligence, if we could train individuals in emotional intelligence skills, that can be an effective way of optimizing wellness and promoting resilience in an effort to decrease the risk of burning out. So this was a study that I was involved with in which we looked at our pediatric residents and med-peds residents, and we found that doing a training session on emotional intelligence increased their wellness scores and their stress management scores. So this is a table from that study, and here you can see that there was a statistically significant increase compared to before their baseline after a educational intervention in which they were taught various emotional intelligence skills, that they had a significant increase in the score related to stress management, specifically flexibility, stress tolerance and optimism, and their wellness score also improved as well. So again, the implication being that training and teaching emotional intelligence skills can help increase stress management scores and also increase wellness scores in residents. Okay, so with that background, let's talk about emotional intelligence, or EI, and just kind of briefly review what that is and then how is it related to promoting resilience. So there's lots of different definitions of emotional intelligence. This definition says that it's your ability to recognize and understand emotions in yourself and others, and your ability to use this awareness to manage your behavior and relationships. So it's all about being able to control your emotions and understand your emotions so that you can build strong relationships with other people. So that's what the definition of emotional intelligence is. There's different models of emotional intelligence. The common model that is used breaks up emotional intelligence into these four components: the component of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and social skill, or also known as relationship management. We're going to talk about each four of these sections and how they are related to the development of resilience. So let's first talk about self-awareness. What is it and how is it related to developing resilience? So self-awareness is knowing and recognizing that you are in the middle of an emotionally charged and stressful interaction. So it's having that awareness and having that recognition and being able to acknowledge that you've just gone through an emotionally draining situation. Because once you have this self-awareness, then you can focus on managing your response to these type of emotionally draining situations. So emotional intelligence in relation to resilience, the first step is having self-awareness. You first have to know and recognize and be aware of the fact that you just went through a stressful situation. You just went through an emotionally charged interaction, and that drained you in some way. And unless you have that awareness, you're not going to be able to do anything to replenish the energy that you have expended. So the first step is having this awareness that you went through a stressful situation, and then being able to do something about it. So again, self-awareness is really knowing yourself, right? So it's knowing what are the things that trigger strong emotions in you. And those might trigger positive emotions in you or negative emotions in you. So knowing those triggers. It's knowing who pushes your buttons, who makes you frustrated, who makes you angry, who makes you annoyed, right? It's having that awareness. It's knowing that different tasks and maybe even different people suck the life out of you or exhaust you. I think this is very important to recognize that there's some activities that you do or that you have to do that are going to drain you and suck the energy out of you. And it's also, I think, important to recognize that there are some people that can suck the life out of you and suck energy out of you as well. I think that's an important part of resilience development related to emotional intelligence, to have that awareness that people can have that effect on you. And then it's also knowing which activities or interactions or people can energize you and revitalize you and restore you. So it's being aware of what activities and people can drain you, and what activities or people can re-energize you or restore you. So that's part of self-awareness. An important thing to remember is that emotions are contagious. That's an important concept related to emotional intelligence. Being aware of the fact that your emotions have a significant effect on everyone else around you. And that if you're around people who are positive, they can have a very positive effect on you. And if you're around people who are negative, then that can have a negative effect on you as well. So emotions are contagious and energy is contagious as well. Right. So it's so important to recognize that the mood and the morale of people around you can affect your mood and morale. And the energy level of people around you can affect your energy level as well. So there's people that will give you positive energy because they're upbeat and they're optimistic and they're excited and they're passionate, and you can draw energy from them. But then there's other people who are negative and who are bitter, who are angry, and who are complaining, and who are judgmental and critical, and they really suck the energy out of you. So I think it's important to have that awareness that emotions are contagious and energy is contagious, because that has a huge effect on your own emotions and your own energy level as well. And that's part of self-awareness related to emotional intelligence and the promotion of resilience. Okay, so you could take the opportunity to do a self-awareness worksheet. So if you want, as I explain this and I go through it, you can pause the video and take a moment to fill out this worksheet, or you can do it afterwards. But I think this is a very important exercise, is to go through this so you have some awareness of what are the activities that exhaust you or drain you or deplete you. And then what are some activities that energize you or invigorate you or revitalize you? And then thinking about some people that exhaust you or drain you or energize or drain your energy. And then thinking about some people that energize you or invigorate you and revitalize you. So I think that's important. So here's an example of a worksheet that's filled out, right? So you can take this and make a blank worksheet like this, either now or afterwards. But I think it's a good exercise to do. So this is an example of this worksheet. So there's 4 categories, and then on the blank worksheet, maybe come up with 4 or 5 things in each one of these categories. So the first category is list some activities that exhaust you. So I've listed some things that maybe that maybe exhaust me, right? So it's doing some required online modules that I have to do for work, or it's finishing my clinic notes in our electronic medical record system, right? Or maybe it's going shopping with my spouse, or mowing the lawn, or participating in a workshop, right? Or something that drains me and exhausts me, right? Other activities that energize me, so that might be working out or doing some exercise, or for some people it might be music or reading, or their faith or religion or spirituality, or walk in nature or thinking about nature, or some sort of hobby, right? That could be re-energizing for people, right? And then the next category is list some people that exhaust you, right? So maybe it's that one faculty member, that one attending physician that just exhausts you, right? Maybe it's that one nurse that you have to interact with and they just exhaust you. Maybe it's your in-laws, maybe it's your neighbor, maybe it's your aunt, right? These are people that just drain you and suck the life out of you and suck the energy out of you, right? But then hopefully there's some people that energize you. Right, so maybe it's your classmates or your peers, maybe it's your family, it's your kids, it's your best friend, or it's your faculty advisor that really energizes you and motivates you, right? So I think it's important to think about all of these activities and people in these four categories, and maybe just write down 3 or 4 in each box, just to have your own worksheet and your own list, because that's part of self-awareness. Many people, when I do this as an actual like workshop with people, they find the act of writing this down is very helpful, because sometimes they're not thinking about it, or it's in their mind, but they don't realize it. When you actually write down an activity that drains you, or an activity that exhausts you, or a person that drains you, or a person that exhausts you or energizes you, writing that down, it can be very helpful. So people usually find this activity very helpful, to be able to write it down. And also, again, when I've done this in a workshop format, the feedback I've gotten is that again, it's very helpful to visualize this. And I think people also recognize that it's important to understand that one size does not fit all, right? Everybody's list here is going to be very individualized, right? Everyone's list here is going to be very personalized for that specific person. So I think that's an important concept, that the list here, everything's going to be very, very different. And I think that's an important concept from wellness perspective, because sometimes we think that, let's coordinate a wellness activity for, the entire, department or the entire group or whatever. And we do, some sort of wellness activity, and we feel that that has to help everyone's wellness. But that's not the case, right? For somebody, one activity might increase their wellness, but for someone else, maybe that activity is not that helpful, right? So I think one size does not fit all is very important to keep in mind when it comes to wellness activities, that this list, this worksheet, is very individualized and very personalized for you. And that's why it's so important to write this down for what are the activities and people that drain you, or energize you. So I think that's very important. And I think also, I think it's again important to recognize that, as I mentioned, some activities might be energetic and energizing for others, and some might not be. That same activity might not be, right? So for example, an example of jogging, right? For some people, going out on a run and jogging is energizing, right? They do that to restore themselves and to regain some energy, right? But for somebody like myself, I hate jogging, right? That would just exhaust me, right? The thought of jogging just exhausts me, right? So that same activity of jogging and running, it might be energizing for one person, but it might be draining to another person. So it's very, very different for everyone. So the lists are very individualized. So I think that's important to keep in mind as well. I think another point to make here is that this list can change, right? On any given day, your list might change, right? So maybe some days, your family and your kids are energizing, right? But then the next day, something's happening, and you just need some personal time, and you don't want your kids to come around you because you feel that you're just going to drain more energy out of you, right? So things can change, and the list can change based on the situation and can fluctuate. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. And then again, I just want to reiterate the point that people can exhaust you as well, and people can energize you as well. So I think it's so important to have that awareness, to recognize that the interactions you have with different people, are they energizing you or are they draining you? So I think that's important to keep in mind as well. So take a moment, either now or afterwards, to maybe fill out your own worksheet on self-awareness, and think about some of these components, because they can be very very helpful then. Okay, so now let's move on to the second component of emotional intelligence, and talk about self-management and how that is related to resilience. So self-management. So when you know your emotions are running high, you may say things or do things you ordinarily would not do, right? When we're emotional, when we're upset, when we're angry, when we're in an emotional state of mind, we tend to say things or do things that we ordinarily would not do, right? And self-management skill of emotional intelligence, that self-management skill allows you to regulate and ultimately be in control of your emotions, and to ensure that your reaction to that situation is an emotionally intelligent one. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some specific resilience strategies. So this is a couple of strategies. So this is one strategy that this author highlights, where she says, number one, learn the distinguishing features of what restores you and what depletes you. right? Know what are the things, tasks, activities, or people that restore you, and what are the things and activities and tasks or people that deplete you, right? And that's basically self-awareness, right? I added the word self-awareness because I see that as a component of emotional intelligence, and I think this is really self-awareness. And that self-awareness worksheet that we just went through really helps you come up with that list and be aware of the things that restore you and the things that deplete you. So that's the first one of the first steps in resilience. Again, is to have that self-awareness. Then the second component that she mentions is mindfully manage the conditions and behaviors in your life that most impact your personal resource level, right? She calls it your personal resource level. I like to think of it as your personal energy level. So you need to be able to mindfully manage the conditions and behaviors in your life that impact your personal energy level, right? So that's basically, in my mind, the emotional intelligence skill of self-management, right? Managing your behavior, managing your time, managing your life so that you are conserving energy and you are impacting your personal energy level in a way that you are not draining too much energy and then being at risk for burning out. So this self-management strategy is all about, again, managing your time, managing your day, managing the tasks that you have to do, and trying to maybe do more of the things that restore you, right? You're using self-awareness, you have a list of things that restore you, so you manage your day, you manage your time, and try to do more things that restore you, and try to do less of those things that deplete you or put you at risk for burning out, right? So that's managing your time, managing your day. So I think that's very important as well. Now, sometimes, we have a list of things that we have to do, and we just kind of do them without thinking about the best order in which to do them, right? And sometimes what happens is that we end up doing things that might drain us because we do an activity and that drains us a little bit. We do another activity and then drains us some more. And we do another activity and that drains us some more. And we meet with another individual that drains us, and now we are doing multiple back-to-back activities that are just draining our energy level and now is putting us risk for burning out, right? So you don't want to do things back to back to back that are going to deplete your energy level, right? So you need to be able to maybe move things around and put them in a different order if you can, so that you're not doing things back to back to back that are going to drain your energy level. So move things around, change the order in which you are doing things so that you're doing something that's maybe draining your energy, but then you follow it with something that increases your energy, then maybe that drains it, then it increases it. So that your energy level kind of goes up and down, but it doesn't keep going down, down, down because you're doing continuous back to back to back draining type of activities then. In her book, she calls it strategic sequencing. And she says basically you have to consciously manipulate task sequence to help prevent burnout. And I think this is a very important idea, right? So move things around consciously, put them in a sequence that helps prevent burnout. So again, don't do things back to back to back that are going to be draining. Move things around so you do something that's draining, followed by something energizing, and then draining and energizing. So if you can, move those things around in the task and in the sequence in which you are going to do those tasks, and that can really help prevent burnout. So I think that's an important concept. Okay, so now you're going to have the opportunity to do a second worksheet, another self-reflection type of exercise. So again, you can take time to do it now, or you can do it afterwards. But I think it's important to maybe try to do this at some point. So this is creating what I call your own individual energy profile, your own IEP, right? So it's creating your own individual energy profile. So how does this work? So here's an example of a blank individual energy profile that you're going to fill out, right? So on the x-axis is the time of day. So you identify one day, and you're going to plot out what was your energy level based on the different tasks that you did on that day, right? So think about a day in the recent past, this week, last week, and then think about maybe 4 or 5 things that you did that day. Look at your calendar and your schedule if you have to, and kind of plot out your energy level and see what happens to your energy level on that given day, just to give you an idea of what your energy profile for that day might look like, right? So here's an example. Let's go through a specific day that I had last week, right? So I woke up and my personal energy level was at a 5, okay? On a scale of 1 to 10, I was right in the middle at a 5. Then I came to work, and that brought my energy level down to a 4, right? Just the act of coming to work, drained me a little bit and brought my energy level down to a 4. And then I responded to some emails, and that was annoying me a little bit. And now my energy level came down to a 3. right? And then I was on service, so I went and rounded on my inpatient service, and it was kind of busy, and that drained me some more. And now my energy level was down to a 2, right? Okay, and now it was kind of in the middle of the day, and I ended up having lunch with a friend, and that brought my energy level from a 2 all the way up to a 6. Then I went back to my team of learners and did some teaching about some of our patients, and that added some energy, and that brought my energy level to a 7. And then I had to have a hard conversation with a family of a patient that wasn't doing very well, and that drained me and brought my energy level from a 7 down to a 4. Then I went home, had dinner with my family, and increased my energy level to a 6. And then right before going to bed, I got into an argument with my spouse, and my energy level came down to a 3. Right. So that's my energy profile for that one given day, as I kind of plot out what's happening with my energy throughout the day then, right? So this is an example of what yours might look like, and you could, again, take 4 or 5 things on a day or how many of you want, and just kind of plot it out and see what happens. So again, I think a few things to point out and to recognize. The first thing is that our energy level is not flat, right? It goes up and down. As you can see, my energy level on this day fluctuated. It kind of went up and down, right? So our energy level always goes up and down. It's always constantly fluctuating. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. Also then, when I do this again as a workshop and we have a discussion about it with the people participating, I ask if anybody hit a level, energy level of a 10 as they plot it out. And in almost every circumstance, nobody ever hits a 10 on their energy profile for the given day that they were plotting out, which is fascinating to me that we are not able to ever hit an energy level of a 10, right? And on my example, I wasn't able to hit an energy level of a 10 either. So I think that begs the question then, what does it take to get us to an energy level of a 10, right? Can we ever get to an energy level of 10? And we need to figure out how can we at some point in the day have a high energy level and be all the way at a 10, right? What is it going to take to get us there, right? Occasionally, some people have said they've hit a 10, and it's been related to the fact that, they had something to do with their family or a friend, and that it was just a really good moment and a good time, and that brought their energy level up to a 10. But rarely does somebody ever hit a 10. So that's one thing that we have to just think about is how do we get to a 10, and why don't we get to a 10, and what is it going to take for us to get to a 10? And I think we need to recognize that. Also, I think it's important to note that some things in some activities really boost your energy level. Like for example, I was down to a 2, and then I had lunch with a friend, and it was a good conversation. We laughed, and had a good discussion, and brought it up 4 points, right? But I started at a 2, and those 4 points only brought it up to a 6 then, right? But if I had already been at a 6 and then had lunch with a friend, and my energy went up by 4 points, that would have brought it up to a level of a 10, right? So again, I think it's important to see that and to recognize that. So if I could be at a level of a 6 and I know something's going to bring my energy up by 4 points, maybe that can bring it up to a 10. But if I start off at a 2, it's only going to bring it up to a 6 then, right? So I think that's important to keep in mind. And again, in my example here, in the beginning of the day, I did multiple things back to back to back that really just drained my energy level, and it brought me down to an energy level of a 2 then, right? So again, making sure you're not doing back to back draining activities. So is there a way to move some of these things around through that strategic sequencing type of idea, so that I'm not coming down to a level of a 2? Maybe I could have responded to emails later on in the day versus right up front in the beginning, so that it didn't bring my energy level down a little bit at that point then, right? So can I move things around, right? Or can I insert some sort of restorative activity along the way to help boost up my energy level then, right? So I think those are important things. And sometimes when you plot out your energy level and you see it this way, it can really make a difference. You don't realize what's happening and how low your energy was getting, and the opportunity to maybe move things around, right? And to take advantage of that, right? So again, was there an opportunity for me to use the strategy of strategic sequencing, right? To move things around. So I'm not doing back-to-back draining activities that bring me down to an energy level of a 2. And sometimes sometimes, you can't move things around, right? You have to do certain things at a certain time, and there's really no way you can avoid it, and you can't, you just got to do it, and sometimes you can't avoid it, right? And that's fine. But I think in that situation, then maybe is it possible to insert some restorative activity along the way then, right? So maybe at this point, as my energy level is going down, maybe I do something restorative at that point to bump my energy level up a little bit, right? So maybe I look at my self-awareness worksheet and I find an activity that, that restores me. So, maybe it's just, talking to, a friend and, yeah, getting that friend to, make me laugh about something, or it's maybe just getting up away from your desk and walking around and looking at the sunshine. Maybe it's, doing some sort of mindfulness type of activity or meditation activity that can restore you and energize you, whatever it is. But I think it's important for us to recognize that there's moments and opportunities that we can take to insert some sort of restorative activity to boost up our energy level along the way then. And that's part of that self-awareness, to be aware of the fact that your energy level is coming down, and then to recognize that, and then through your self-awareness, be aware of what are those activities or people that can re-energize you, and maybe insert some of those activities or discussions with people or interactions with those people to boost up your energy level a little bit. So I think that's very important to keep in mind. So again, this is an example of what an individual energy profile might look like, and you can take some time to plot out your own at this moment or after the completion of the video, just to see what your energy profile might look like. Okay, so as we get to the end of this session here, just to kind of summarize now. These couple of resilience strategies that we've been talking about were related to self-awareness and self-management, which are again components of emotional intelligence that we've been discussing. And again, those four components of emotional intelligence are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and social skill. And we've talked about the first two as we end this video. And now in the next session of this video, so part two of emotional intelligence and resilience, is going to be focusing on social awareness and social skill, and how those components of emotional intelligence are related to development of resilience. So with that, I want to thank you for your time, and hopefully you found this beneficial, and hopefully we'll see you at part two of this video on using emotional intelligence skills to develop resilience.